All right, hey guys, and welcome. Let's do a read together, sort of this Marvel wiki that we have here. So I'm getting this on marvelfandom.com. It's a pretty decent website. I think it's actually hands down the best fandom website for Marvel. I do think that's one better. So I actually want to go through the Civil War, which they call Civil War event. I'm not sure if this one covers both Civil War and Civil War 2, because there's two different parts to Civil War. The other one being mainly about Captain Marvel and Iron Man. And the first one is the original Civil War, which is between Iron Man and Captain America. And of course, it all starts off because of Scarlet Witch. Now, let's just go through it together because certain parts are quite hazy to me. Because Civil War is a really like a huge compilation of stories across the Marvel universe, not the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Marvel comic universe, and it covers multiple heroes and multiple groups of heroes. It covers the X-Men. It covers the what do you call this? The Terrigen Mist is for the Inhumans. It covers, of course, the Avengers and yeah, a bunch of other smaller groups like the Defenders and whatever. But yeah, a lot of it actually, and also the Fantastic Four. But main people, the main victims actually of the story are the X-Men. And I used to read a lot of those Spider-Man comics that brought me into this story, and eventually I did read a lot of X-Men, and I think I leaned a lot towards the X-Men and Spider-Man comics because they always felt more personal compared to the Avengers comics, and I quite frankly was not a fan of Captain America or Iron Man at the time, but yeah, the X-Men and Spider-Man definitely appealed to me a lot more. Fantastic Four as well, I wasn't really too much into them. So yeah, it's mainly those two. So I was sort of reading it from their perspective, but you have to read it from all perspectives to get the complete story, because it is quite a huge story. And if you're unsure of what I mean, let me pull this up for you. So this is the official Marvel page, and they give you the suggested reading order for Civil War. And if you have a look at this, as you can see, there's a lot of Spider-Man comics that bring you into it, but you also have the Fantastic Four comics. You have the Civil War, the official Civil War comics. Some of the She-Hulk, the Wolverine comics, even the Thunderbolts. That is Baron Zemo, and then you have the X Factors, Fantastic Four, a bunch of Thunderbolts, I guess. Young Avengers, of course, and the New Avengers as well. Miss Marvel's story, yes, of course. Miss Marvel, more New Avengers, more Young Avengers. So it's basically a story that spans across the Marvel universe and affects all these different groups of characters. And all of these comics together is what tells the story of Civil War. Now, of course, the Civil War itself, Civil War, the one that's titled Civil War itself, are the ones that tell most of the story, but a lot of the comics are like this one. This big Civil War one definitely tells most of the story, but a lot of these comics actually have a lot of information regarding the backstory of each characters and how they're pulled into this Civil War and how they are affected in their own individual stories and how they actually question things that are happening in Civil War before the main fights take place. Like Civil War 7 is one of the best ones, right? Because a lot of characters, you can see Spider-Man lying on the ground as Captain America duel it out. Sorry, Captain America. What the hell was this? Iron Man and Captain America duel it out. And yeah, this is like one of the big ones. And this is completely the opposite of what happens in the MCU, where the only one who gets hurt is War Machine, which is stupidly hilarious for me. Which is yeah, it's just too childish, I feel, and the story is also really bad compared to the way the comics fledge it out. The comics too do have some problems with their writing, because there's so many different writers that come together to put the story. But they had a plan, and more or less it's executed well. Especially the main comics, the Civil War title comics do execute it really well. But a lot of the Amazing Spider-Man comics, I personally feel did a really good job because those were the comics that I was collecting, and it drew me into the story of Civil War gradually, where I did read more about Civil War. And yeah, so you have 97 different comics. I'm pretty sure there's more than that. Actually, I think it's about 100 in total, maybe that will affect the story. But if Marvel.com tells you it's 97, it's probably true. So don't take it from me. Take it from Marvel.com. So anyway, if you guys are interested in picking up the comics to read it, I seriously suggest Amazing Spider-Man because it does cover a lot of the story and then the main Civil War. And of course, you can look for some of the X-Men comics because the X-Men comics are very, very important in the story of Civil War because they are the main victims of the Civil War story. Anyway, let's read along and let's go through this. You guys can look it up by yourselves in marvelfandom.com and look up what the Civil War event is all about. But today, this is what we're going to be doing. So glad you could join me. So, in a battle between Nitro and the New Warriors, Nitro exploded, seemingly killing the entire team and a huge number of civilians. 60 school children nearby. So, people seriously die, right? In the comics, there's no holding back. If there's a war in the title, it's death. It's for sure. This led the US government to introduce a living weapon of mass destruction registry for all superpowered individuals. Most heroes were divided into on the issue and a civil war ensued. So basically, they started to put a law out there to say that if you are a mutant or a person with superpowers that can cause death, you have to be registered. And I don't think it's only those who can cause death, but it's anyone who has potential has to be part of the Registration Act. And it mainly targeted mutants, right? So just to give you more backstory, Nitro is this guy, Robert Hunter, right? So let me go to his powers and abilities. Okay. Nitro possesses superhuman ability to turn himself into a living bomb. Nitro can blob his entire body at will and exist in its sentient gaseous form while he reconstitutes himself. So Nitro is pretty impressive, right? His powers are seriously scary, off the charts, and the fact that it's just a living bomb that can blow up and burn things around him makes him a serious threat. So he is a mutant, and I think that's why the main targets of this were the mutants. So the Superhuman Registration Act has been a long time in the making, logical extension of the often proposed never passed Mutant Registration Act. The Superhuman Registration Act arose following the devastation attack on Manhattan in reprisal for Nick Fury's Secret War. So you guys can look into the Secret War, it's a whole other story, and Hulk's destructive rampage in Las Vegas, which killed 26 adults, two children, and a dog. I like how they mention a dog. It's because Americans have this huge sentiment towards dogs. But anyway, um, the Hulk's attack, as well as we watched in the Civil War in the movie, I think no one died, right? I'm not sure. I don't think they actually gave a kill count on how many people the Hulk killed, but I don't think anyone died. But anyway, here, yeah, you can tell that there's a whole seriousness to the story. You know, this is real death. This is what happens if people with actual powers, like the scale of what these comics depict, really existed. Were out there. If they're evil, they're gonna kill everything around them. That like, even on a bad day, good people could do some crazy shit, right? Imagine if you had powers like Nitro, our buddy Nitro here. So here it was not called the Sokovian Accords. It's actually called the Superhero Registration Act and the Mutant Registration Act, which is the extension of it. So, yeah, the Illuminati subsequently deceived the Hulk and jettisoned him into space following the incident. This is quite hilarious because this is also similar to what happens in the what do you call this? In the Avengers, the second Avengers, towards the end of the destruction of Sokovia, I guess. And when Ultron gets defeated by Vision, Hulk is basically in a ship and he sort of autopilots himself off world, which is really weird and funny. Because in the actual story, the Illuminati is the one that deceives the Hulk and sends him to space. And yeah, there is Illuminati in this. M Day and Decimation. Following M Day, okay, so M Day is very important. Uh, this is where Scarlet Witch goes batshit crazy. After altering reality, so mutants were the dominant race, the Scarlet Witch then changed reality again, this time attempting to rid the world of the mutant gene. Sounds horrifying, right? By casting another spell, No More Mutants, depowering the vast majority of mutants. The event occurred 11:15 on Tuesday morning in New York City, or off coast of Callao, Peru at 3 p.m. in the afternoon of November 2nd. So they have two different places to remember here. The decimation reduced the mutant population down to a few hundred, as most mutants were depowered and some others were killed as a result of losing their powers. Could you imagine the physiological effects on mutants who had morphed as a result of their powers, instantly losing it because of the curse that the Scarlet Witch, creates? So in total, nearly a million mutants were either depowered or killed by the decimation. At the time of the decimation, it was first estimated that 91.4% of the world's mutant population lost their powers overnight. So this is MD, right? This is some horrifying shit that took place. So, following MD, 90% of the Earth's mutant population found itself spontaneously depowered, with the mutant population suddenly vast, far less visible, and extremist groups claiming the event marked a turn in the tide of growing mutant dom, if not divine punishment against all mutants. Yeah, they're saying that, oh yeah, this is some divine thing because they don't know that Scarlet Witch is up to no good, right? Sympathy for the group was near an all-time low. Like they didn't really care. Many of the remaining mutants, estimated at first at 198 individuals, were gathered up and forced to relocate to Xavier Institute for their own protection. These events put public support for the registration bill at around 50%. So, yeah, that whole thing just went nuts. Iron Man was among those working to prevent passage of the act. He even hired a new Titanium Man to attack him immediately after his testimony before the Commission on Superhuman Activities, hoping it would hammer home that the act would make the nation less capable of dealing with rogue or foreign superhuman threats. So Iron Man basically worked a plan, right? He wanted a plot to say that even with this registration, right, the superhuman registration, it's going to create extremism, which is what naturally happens in real life as well. You create a law that is there just to control a small group of people, but it creates extremism towards the vast majority of people who eventually want to just show that they have the right to express their freedom in different ways. The anti registration camp seem to be making headway and may have even defeated the bill by the narrowest of margins if not for the events that took place in Stamford, Connecticut. So, this is very important. Nitro, Cobalt Man, Speed Freak, and Coldheart had been holed up in a house in Stamford when the new Warriors located them. The Warriors were at the time the focus of a reality TV show, and although a number of them felt that the villains were out of their league, the network and others in the group thought it would be great for ratings. This is hilarious. This one reminds me of The Boys, right? Where all superheroes are doing things for a publicity stunt so that they can continue to make money. Basically, it's all about money. So here, the Warriors were sort of the boys, like the what are the villains in the boys called? It's like the Justice League, right? Anyway, I forgot what their name was, but yeah, it's like the superhero group who are the stars of their show. So they want to do this for ratings, but they have no idea what they're up against. When Namorita attempted to capture Nitro, he used his explosive powers and destroyed several city blocks, including the elementary school at the epicenter. All of the new warriors, the three villains accompanying Nitro, and over 600 civilians, among them 60 schoolchildren, were killed. Yep, the comics do not hold back. The comics really tell you what war looks like, and I think that it really suits the genre that we're talking about here, which is questioning what would happen if people actually had powers. And I'm just surprised at why the TVs are so afraid, or rather the cinematic universes are so afraid to actually show you what reality could be. If Batman kills a guy, everyone goes nuts because the last 10 movies told you that Batman doesn't kill people. But you don't know what will happen if Batman's been put in a war. That guy is military trained, he can kill. And in a real war you don't get to choose to save people. You're not given the privilege, because everyone there is either stronger than you or just as capable as you to kill you. And that's what it feels like to be a soldier in the field. Not that I can speak for one. I'm not one myself, so yeah, but big respect to those who are actually out there pointing guns, for the right reasons, of course. Numerous members of the superhero community arrive on the scene to search for survivors. Growing tension. Public sentiment towards superheroes plummeted. The inactive new warriors were widely regarded as baby killers by association. Hindsight, desperate to distance himself from them, began releasing their secret identities, and almost as many were killed by lynching as by the explosion in Stamford. So this is also quite interesting how by giving away people's names, more people eventually got lynched. The Human Torch was beaten into a coma outside a Manhattan nightclub, which is an impressive thing. You guys should check that out, how that even happens. It's quite amazing to know the Human Torch can end up in the situation. Public opinion has been lukewarm for the Superhuman Registration Act before. Now it passed the tipping point. Although nominally a UN agency, SHIELD seemed to have assumed the brunt of enforcing the act under Acting Director Maria Hill. Anti-registration. So this is where Captain America actually comes in. So he balked at leading a force to apprehend rogue heroes. He felt the heroes needed to be above direct government control, because when politicians could control the heroes, they could decide who the villains were. And this means that what Cap really understands is that if politicians were given the chance, they could label other entire nations, minority groups, religious groups who they were against just because of like phobias and whatever, to say that they are the villains, and people would fall for it. So he doesn't want that sort of political control enforced on superheroes, because he knows people with power are dangerous and actually more capable to do more harm than good. So when Cap refuses to support the Superhuman Registration Act aboard the SHIELD helicarrier, Hill attempted to arrest him. Yet she had no right to do so, for the act had not been passed yet. So Captain America was not yet a superhuman illegal combatant, so Cap's actions in the case were in self-defense. In his escape, Cap began organizing other anti-registration heroes into a group that pressed up the Secret Avengers. Most of his core group, Hercules, Bill Foster, Luke Cage, Daredevil, Falcon, and Cable, pretty cool, huh, if you read the list, had to take on a series of identities to avoid capture, literally becoming outlaws. The Secret Avengers apprehended. So by this time, the law was actually passed. The Registration Act was actually passed. The Secret Avengers apprehended a number of criminals while evading the opposing heroes and the new Shield Cape Killer units. Other heroes joined them or were liberated after their arrests. The Young Avengers, Cloak and Dagger, were some of the later heroes to join the group. So Cloak and Dagger has a TV series ongoing. I think it's not that good. Started off pretty well, but just didn't live up to it. But yeah, in the comics, Cloak and Dagger are pretty important. Pro registration. Iron Man, on the other hand, felt that it was reasonable that heroes have proper training and oversight, that the casual self policing the superhero community had enjoyed until now was insufficient, and most importantly, that it was now impossible to resist this change in the political landscape. He gathered his own pro registration heroes to bring in Captain America's group and other non registered combatants. Mr. Fantastic, with the help of Yellow Jacket and Tony Stark, began working on designing a prison nicknamed 42, because it was the 42nd idea on Tony's list of ways to improve the world to detain superpower violators. So this is sort of poking on the fact that he renames all of his Iron Man suits by the model that he makes, Mark 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 42. Uh, was 42nd idea was the one to make this prison. So if you realize the group that is working here, Yellow Jacket is on Tony Stark's side. Yes, the same villain Yellow Jacket in the MCU. Of course, the most intelligent person, by the way, in this group, just for those of you who don't know, the most intelligent person in the Marvel universe is Mr. Fantastic. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it is Mr. Fantastic. And I think it is followed by Hank Pym, right? Yeah, I think it's followed by Hank Pym, and then Tony Stark. So I think Hank Pym and Mr. Fantastic are probably the debatable part. You can say that Hank Pym is actually the smartest man, and Mr. Fantastic is second. But I think Mr. Fantastic is actually the smartest man, because he can deal with a lot of astrophysics, reality warping physics to open portals and whatever shit. And Hank Pym is more to his study of particles, matter, and then there's Tony Stark, the engineer. So most of the pro registration heroes such as Mr. Fantastic, Doc Samson, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, and Wonder Man already had highly public identities. Even Stark unmasked himself as Iron Man for the second time in his career, and admittedly to previous attempts to hide his identity. One supporter, however, was not yet public: Spider-Man, who was reluctant to reveal his identity. So I thought that when the Civil War movie came out, we will actually lead into this, where the Superhero Registration Act will continue. It'll be more serious and way like it'll be fledged out way more before the whole Thanos arc, right? But I think they sort of rushed it to bring Thanos into the picture, and the Infinity Stone saga just came in and just forced every other idea out. Because Civil War had so much potential if it led to the rest of this. Anyway, he prepared to liquidate his assets and flee the country with his wife and aunt, Mary Jane, yes, and Aunt May, to avoid revealing his identity and putting them in jeopardy. They, on the other hand, were supportive and felt it was time for Peter to finally get some recognition for his good work. During a live national televised broadcast, he pulled off his mask and announced, "My name is Peter Parker, and I've been Spider Man since I was 15 years old." So he does it. Mutant Matters. The X Men, on behalf of the mutant community, declared mutuality in the growing conflict. Acting leader Cyclops, who is a true leader in the comics. He's not like that. The way they depicted Cyclops in the movies is like he's some kind of entitled douchebag. No, he's not. He's not that, right? He's actually a really good leader in the comics. He felt that the mutants had already been through too much during the decimation to take a stand either way and survive. Individuals within the X Men had their own opinions on the matter. However, Wolverine felt that the act was every bit as racist as oppressive as the Mutant Registration Act. While Bishop felt it was necessary to embrace the act and make sure that mutants could continue to self police, lest the truly oppressive regime of his home timeline should come to pass. As the last known mutants, all members of the 198 and X-Men were already in government databases and were registered by default when the act passed. The 198 has since shuffed at the constant one surveillance, as well as the inability to leave school grounds without being tracked by monitoring chips. When it was discovered the chips could also deliver a powerful electrical discharge to assure the 198 could be subdued, they rioted. So there were a lot of things that were being done to oppress this group that was already being controlled. And this is what really drove them further into war, right? So, of course, a bunch of things happen here. I don't think these things are too important. Into this chaotic scene comes Pietro Maximoff, the man once known as Quicksilver, had lost his speed powers during the decimation event, but had gained new powers by inhaling the inhuman Sterigin mist. So this is an important thing. Quicksilver is no longer a mutant because of what Wanda Maximoff did, but he's now an inhuman because he inhaled the Terrigen mist. Um, he now has the ability to restore lost powers to former mutants. So he basically has the opposite ability of his sister, which is very, very like this is karma, right? This is really karma playing through. Though doing so usually ended badly for the recipient of his gift, he has also set up shop in Mutant Town, though the full extent of his activities have not yet been revealed. So yeah, this is something that's going on. Now, Wolverine tracking Nitro was pretty impressive. Wolverine basically tracks down the villain Nitro, who's this like the human bomb, and Nitro blows up. He kills everyone else in the area, but Wolverine is left recovering in his adamantium plated skeleton, and he actually recovers just enough to listen to Nitro's conversation. And yeah, he talks to someone informing about his alien skill. Nitro uses the mutant growth hormone to enhance his powers, which is what caused him to be so strong. So when finally regenerated, Wolverine went toe to toe with Nitro, taking advantage of the small radius of safety around his body that prevents Nitro from incinerating himself or anything on his person. The fight was interrupted by a trio of Atlanteans before Wolverine could kill Nitro. The Atlanteans sought to bring Nitro back to Atlantis, where he was wanted by Prince Namor. Aha. Probably the first superhero. But yeah, Prince Namor for the murder of his cousin, Namorita. Wolverine fought with them, then joined them to go to Atlantis to confront Namor personally. During the course of debate over what to do with Nitro, the villain freed himself and tried to take an Atlantean woman hostage. Wolverine subdued him, cutting off his hand in the process. He then decided to leave Nitro to Atlantean justice and focus instead on the ones who supplied him with the mutant growth hormone, MGH. He eventually determined the distributor was the corrupted head of Damage Control, a firm that took cleanup and rebuilding contracts following superhuman fights. It didn't take much detective work to determine that the more powerful villains meant bigger fights and bigger contracts. So, yeah, that's an important little chapter with what happens between Wolverine and Nitro, but this eventually gets out of hand. So here we have Helmut Zemo and the Thunderbolts. Pretty cool little team going together. But yeah, that's another little story there. Numerous other villains have been released since then under more direct government supervision. Green Goblin, Vulture, Jester, Jack O' Lantern. This is some crazy stuff, by the way. But yeah, these are more of the villain stories. You guys can read them later on. I'm not too interested in them. Civilian victims. Yes, Secret Avengers operated out of a series of secret safe houses set up by Nick Fury, kept secret from everyone within S.H.I.E.L.D. Cap's team continued to apprehend supervillains. The convoy was diverted when Iron Man became aware of Cap's plan, ended up going directly down Yancey Street, a hotbed of civilian opposition to the act. The Thing, who was only visiting his old neighborhood, got roped into crowd control. When a young member of Yancey street gang named C died in the riot, Grimm became so disgusted with both sides that he left the country for France. Incidentally, US government made it very difficult for Grimm to get out of the country. His assets were frozen, his baggage was held. He was lucky to board before he was added to the nation's no-fly list. He took up with the heroes of Paris. So, as you can see, a lot of events basically are breaking up groups of heroes. Then the Runaways, of course, they had their own little thing going on. Um, Project Lightning. So this is also interesting. The Secret Avengers were lured into a false emergency call into an ambush by the pro-registration forces in an attempt by Iron Man to talk out the conflict. However, Captain America attacked Stark, leading to a direct confrontation between the two sides. They first attempted to disable Cap and his teams with Sonics, but as the battle began to turn, decided to unleash the security Project Lightning, Thor. After the fight, it was soon revealed that this is not the true Thor, but a clone created from a few strands of Thor's hair, and empowered by technology copy of the recently returned Mjolnir. The return of the long missing god among them gave everyone pause, but battle soon raged on when confronted by Bill Foster. Thor sent a bolt of lightning through the hero's chest, killing him. With both sides in shock, Cap ordered a retreat. Bill Foster's tragic death dramatically changed the way both sides looked at the conflict, and it turned into a true civil war. The event shook up both sides in the war, with Stature and Nighthawk finally surrendering and registering, while the Human Torch and Visible Woman deciding to oppose the act enforcement with Captain America. So, Bill Foster. William Bill Foster. Yes, of course. Let's see. What does this guy do? He's Goliath, basically, if you guys don't know. He uses the pimp particles. He basically becomes Giant Man or Goliath, multiple iterations. Um, but yeah, this guy dies, and that turns everything like solidifies the fact that now Captain America is actually has to fight a war, and yeah, pretty crazy. So Spider-Man actually gets one of a pretty cool and intense story in this as well. So the Iron Spidey suit, right, actually has some tracking mechanism that was put there to monitor his spider sense and his actions, and Stark does this. So I know this from the comics. So he realizes that he's being monitored and it seems too much of a privacy control, and it seems quite psychotic to know that Stark would do this to someone he trusts. So he adds a bunch of override codes for a number of Stark commands designed to subdue designed to subdue him if necessary, and he tries to escape. He learns that many of the most powerful captured superhumans were being held without trial and without access to counsel in an anonymous superhuman prison within the life draining negative zone. Spider Man rebelled against the act and was attacked by Iron Man when he tried to sneak away with Aunt May and Mary Jane. During the fight, the three escaped, and several ex villains were sent to capture him. Already weak, he was found drugged and blasted half to death by Jack O'Lantern and Jester. He was saved at the last minute by the Punisher. Man, this is one of the best moments in the comics when Frank Castle comes in and he's like, "Kid, I got your back," and he saves Spider-Man and brings him to Cap. For me, that redeemed the Punisher for me. I was like, okay, I'm on this guy's side. I don't care how many people he has to kill. If he's saving Spider-Man's ass, yeah, I'm definitely down with it. And yeah, this is a pretty cool moment. Castle revealed that he hadn't cared much about the superheroes' little war until the government started using killers like Bullseye and Venom. Now he was determined to take down the scum, anyone supporting them and anyone in his way. This is so awesome, right? It's Frank Castle we're talking about. The Avengers knew the Punisher's skills were exactly what they needed to wage their guerrilla war, but also that accepting the convicted killer into their ranks destroyed almost all of the legitimacy and moral high ground. That's very true. Later, Spider-Man would interrupt a newscast to make a public statement about the horrors of the act enforcement and pledge to fight it. So this is where Spider-Man reveals what Stark and his no good, up to no good ideas we're doing all along, and it really flips the table. Yeah, and really puts people into perspective of what this war is all about. So, following the incident, U.S. government tried to discredit Cable, who was seen as a risk even before he allied himself with the anti-registration campaign. Cable opposes Registration Act because he sees it as a first step towards government-sponsored super teams, then towards a superpowered police force that will ultimately lead to a global police state. Like Bishop, his concern for the future is driven by knowledge of his timeline's past. For the past few years, Cable has been promoting his island nation of Providence as an intellectual utopia of peace, cooperation, and advanced technology. When Cable recently overthrew the flag smashed as a president of the troubled nation of Rumekistan, I'm not really sure about this, many in the greater world became convinced the would-be mutant messiah was a threat to international stability. So yeah, it's a whole other thing going on there. Atlantis is doing their own thing, not really too important. Attilan is also doing their own thing. Mainly, it's about a cold war with the Inhumans of Attilan over the refusal to return the stolen Terrigen crystals. So the Inhumans basically want to keep the Terrigen crystals, which they believe belongs to them, because it's what creates Inhumans. So they basically have the right to give refuge to whoever people want to, join and become Inhumans and live in Attilan, which is their, moon base or whatever. I think, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it is a moon base, right? But anyway, so yeah, this whole thing is taking place. Origin is stolen by Pietro Maximoff. Unaware of the war footing, the Sentry recently traveled to Attilan, where he was at first attacked, then brought before the royal family, informing the Inhuman royal court of his hidden past. The Secret War, House of M, Decimation, and Civil War. Many of the Inhumans were moved to tears at the tragedy of it all. When Iron Man came to retrieve Reynolds, he was informed that this war would not be allowed to come to their land again, or else the Cold War between the people would heat up very quickly. So, this whole Sentry thing, visiting Atlan, yes, Black Bolt, is something pretty important, and later on would, it delves also in human-driven Civil War. So that's also an important thing to take note of. It's actually X-Men versus Inhumans. So there's sort of that heat going on between them. But I think this thing happens at a very crucial time for the X-Men and the mutants. So I think, yeah, it kind of puts into perspective the fact that both sides will eventually suffer, that both sides do care for each other, understanding, what can happen if they're collectively targeted, making it seem like a racist thing. Anyway, Wakanda, yes, has its own thing. Speedball's fate. Public interest peaked when Speedball was found alive, hurled a state away by the force of the Stanford blast. Robbie seemed to have lost his powers in the blast. He was held without trial in a foreign country at a time, but was eventually relocated and given counsel in the form of Jennifer Walters. She-Hulk, yeah, she's a lawyer, who attempted to argue he was unconscious when the act was passed and thus never had the chance to register. Instead of following her advice, he refused to register. Having no more powers, he was put into the prison's general populace, where he was regarded by the rest of the prisoners as a baby killer. So, yeah, he was basically getting the worst that you can imagine in a prison. Yeah, it really is what it is, right? It really is what it is. Pretty dark, if you ask me. Journalists, nothing really too important. The final battle. Yep, this is where things get quite important. As the Punisher worked his way through the Baxter building to retrieve plans for File 42, Sue Storm went to Atlantis to persuade Namor to join the Secret Avengers, but to no avail. The super villains, Goldbug and Plunderer, arrive at the Secret Avengers base to join Captain America's team, but the Punisher immediately killed them, calling them killers and thieves after their deaths, leading Captain America to attack him and kick him out of the group once he did not raise a finger against him. Secret Avengers, joined by Storm and Black Panther, reach the Rikers Island Penitentiary and head through the portal to the 42 complex. But the team is confronted by the pro registration supporters, revealing each team had placed a spy on the other. So this is, yeah, pretty. This is where it gets really problematic. Hulkling is able to release the incarcerated heroes from cells of the 42 complex through the guise of Henry Pym, making the odds more even. As the battle is about to commence, Captain America warns the pro registration heroes, "Now close your eyes, gentlemen, this might hurt." So, pretty badass if you ask me. As the battle began in the negative zone, Cloak moved the battle to the center of New York City. Namor and an army of Atlanteans joined the battle alongside the Secret Avengers, followed by the Thor clone and Captain Marvel of the pro registration side. Vision disrupts Iron Man's armor, and Captain America is able to subdue him on the battlefield. Mr. Fantastic is shot while trying to save the Invisible Woman from the Taskmaster, and Hercules crushes the skull of the Thor clone. This is intense. We're never getting this in a movie, guys. I'm sorry to say, but at this point, I don't think anyone can convince me that we're going to get anything close to this in the movies. Like if they did make a massive high budget TV series, I would be super happy if I get to see it, before I die eventually. But as of today, in 2022, I don't think we are anywhere close to getting something this intense. So anyway, just before Cap hits Iron Man, several standard cops, EMTs, and firefighters hold him back, and Cap realizes how much damage the fighting has caused to the general population that they all want to protect. Wishing to avoid any more unnecessary bloodshed, Cap surrenders and the team follows suit, with many of Secret Avengers given amnesty, but the government, while Captain America is placed in jail. So, aftermath. So, yeah, 2 weeks later, the 50 State Initiative was officially launched and the Mighty Avengers assemble as a team. Tony Stark was appointed director of S.H.I.E.L.D., while Mariah Hill is demoted to deputy status. Some heroes who choose to move to Canada, while some stay underground, such as the new Avengers. In front of his new Avenger teammates, Luke Cage and Doctor Strange, Spider Man sorrowfully donned his black costume. So just to let you know what's in the Mighty Avengers, it's not it's the team that I'm not too happy about. I don't like them, but it is what it is. So let's see. Sentry, I've got Black Widow, Wonder Man, Ares. Uh, yeah, they needed a Thor, so they took Ares. Wolverine. Yeah, and we're talking about the Ares that's a villain for Wonder, like the Wonder Woman villain sort of thing. Yeah, but this is in Marvel. So Ares here is just it's just some Olympian god, I guess. Anyway, all right. So yep, that's it. That's about the aftermaths of it. There are alternate reality versions, as you can see, which is quite hilarious. Spider Ham here fighting it out. The alternate Civil War is a similar reality where Spider-Man was killed by Karn. So this is another one which was pretty impressive for me. Spider-Man actually getting killed. There are so many versions that they could have gone for, and they went for the complete child-friendly one, where War Machine broke his legs. Like, dude, seriously, the MCU really has to take, I think, a lot more to learn from the way the comics go at it. There's really no holding back, and it's super detailed. And once again, for those of you who are interested, you can go to marvel.com, look up the reading order for the comics, probably purchase some for yourselves. You can totally buy the digital copies online, and I highly recommend those because it's just a lot easier. You just pay for the digital copy, you have it once and for all. It's always up there online, unless one day there's a blackout and then all of society gets doomed with no internet. Then yeah, unfortunately, you have to go and buy the physical copy. But the physical copies, as far as I know, are pretty expensive unless you can get them off like a reseller or a second-hand seller. They are quite expensive. But yeah, if you could get them second-hand, I highly recommend you go for the Amazing Spider-Man ones, the straight up Civil War ones, and my favorite are the X-Men. But of course, you can pick if you do like anything else. I think that's fair enough. Fair enough to put it that way. So yeah, that's it from me. It is just a nice little thing to go through this entire event together, just to let you guys know what it is really like in the comics. And the fact that you can see the blood on Captain America's shield means that Civil War is really war. It is very serious, and it's also the history that they give you, the way Tony Stark has planted these control mechanisms into Spider-Man's suit to sort of keep an eye on him and to put him down if need be. The mutants actually getting microchipped, basically M Day, where Wanda Maximoff creates this, crazy spell that wipes out the mutant race. And then the Terrigen Mist thing going on with the Inhumans. The 60 children in the preschool nearby getting killed out of 600 people. Yeah, there is some serious death here. And I mean, in Sokovian Accords, while they did say that a lot of people died, and the Avengers actually save people, you don't see it. You don't see the deaths on screen. Whereas in the comics, you do actually see people on the ground, dead, covered in blood, headless. There's just so many scary things, and sometimes they're headless, like off the page, like they know that it's a little bit too violent at times. But more than often, you know the reality because they just tell you that this guy's dead. and it's not just some random people. In the comics, it's often someone you know. It's a superhero. It's someone beloved. Especially Spider-Man dying in one of the alternate versions is also a pretty serious thing, if you ask me. So yeah, whose side are you on? Actually, I really am curious if you are still someone who is into picking a side in Civil War. I think everyone is actually anti-registration. I think the only people who took up the pre-registration are those who are fans of MCU who don't really know the backstory of the entire thing. They're like, oh, Iron Man is there, Spider-Man is there. They're the stronger team, so I'm definitely pro-registration. But I mean, it's not about the superheroes and whose teams they're on. It's about the ideology behind Civil War and the idea of the fact that people with abilities being registered under a political act, may cause extremism, may cause too much control, and doesn't make them superheroes, but rather makes them super police or organized police and lets them, become victims of political agenda, and they can actually target specific groups, specific countries, and become a true political war. And that's what Cap was against, which is why he was anti-registration. So anyway, that's it from me. I think it's been nice to just get this out there, and I really really wish one day someone out there has the ability to bring this story together, to life on the big screen. I'm sure there are so many capable directors and studios, and I'm sure that the MCU can do this. They just took the conscious decision not to, because I think selling toys for them to kids was more important. And that's fine and that's fair, but quite frankly, there are a lot of us adults, who grew up reading the comics. Like, we read these, right? All these deaths and murders and war stuff as kids, quite frankly. And I think we turned out absolutely fine knowing the reality of war and how important it is to avoid it, and understanding that political agendas can screw up things. And it's true. As you grow up, you realize it's exactly what's happening in the world out there. Political agendas are the things that are messing up the rights of people to make a choice for themselves, the rights for people to stand up and be individuals. And like, it's all about winning the next election for most people and keeping the money where they want it to be, which is in their pockets. And yeah, quite frankly, this story tells you a lot. And the way the comics actually point out a lot of these real world problems through the storytelling of these superheroes, I think is absolutely amazing. And yeah, I can't say anymore that I really wish we could see this brought to life with the amazing actors and the cast that we have today. But hey, they may never be. Although I hope it does age well. If if you want to really ask me, I don't think it's gonna happen. Yeah, it is what it is, guys. Take care.